Hi there, friends. This may be a little rough. It's been a while since I've made a video, especially with me speaking to you. But as you may have seen if you're at my channel now, I've released a new book entitled Breaking the Spell of Religion and Healing the Trauma. It's actually a piece of work that I've been working on for 15, 20 years. And in a larger sense, it's been a lifetime in the making because it's as much about the people I've helped deal with religious trauma as it is about my own life experience dealing with religious trauma. So I'm going to read from my notes here, and in a couple of minutes you'll have a sense of who I am, what I'm about, and of course you're invited to go to my Amazon book page and read the introductory material there. So, my name is Maurice Turmel. I'm a retired psychologist, also known online as the spiritual psychologist, where spirituality and personal growth have been a specialty of mine for 50 years. Yes, I'm that old. I'm in my late 70s now. And currently, as I mentioned, I've released a book titled Breaking the Spell of Religion and Healing the Trauma. So it sounds scary, I know, for some people, but for those who've lived this, you'll understand what I'm talking about. What could this book and this experience have to do with spirituality, one might ask? Very simple. Persons like myself, traumatized in their formative years by their native religion, Catholicism in my case, have more than a difficult time getting in touch with their deep-rooted spiritual self, simply because it's been buried under mounds of guilt and shame and fear, which are the main products of such religions. It certainly were the main products of my own. One might ask now, how can that be overcome? Back in the 80s, everything we learned about dysfunctional families can now be applied to uncovering this type of trauma and helping individuals find their way to their deepest, most meaningful self. Always ready to emerge once these things have been uncovered and healed. I have lived this myself. That story is a big part of this book, which also includes the stories and experiences of numerous individuals who I saw over the years, including people from Aboriginal groups who lived in residential schools and went through a very horrible hell of their very own. These stories and that story are also part of this. So for some people, we can say, walking through this minefield, I call it, of assaults on their spiritual dimension happens to be a necessary way home. Not fun, but absolutely necessary. Because underneath all of that is who we really are at that core level, is where our heart is and our feelings, and our love for our world and our family, our love for ourselves, hopefully, as we grow to accept and appreciate ourselves. That's certainly life's journey, and it has been for me. So overall, it's not a pretty picture when you're looking at something as ugly and as horrible as religious trauma, but the journey is doable. I've lived it. I've helped other people work through it. It is doable. And the main reason it is doable is that underneath all of that trauma, all of that hurt, pain, and anguish is a deeper you that you will be more than happy to be in touch with, because she is there waiting for you to rescue them, so to speak. Just this innocent child who was born into an environment that was dominated by religion because your parents were religious. In my case, my parents were Catholic. And you had nowhere else to go. This was reality as you grew up in it. So, but later on in life, when you have doubts and you have problems healing yourself and dealing with your own issues, it becomes a formidable task to get through this. So, in my case, just a brief overview. I was born in a French-Canadian style Catholic family, and the messages from my church were stay frightened, we've got you covered, believe our message, our religious message, and you'll be safe. Do not look beyond these walls because all other religions are wrong. Do not dare to tread outside. Ours is the only one that's of value. And that was what I call my welcome as a child into the fold of my religion. It was wrapped all around me like a straitjacket, which may be the case for you too, from the day I arrived on the planet. Coming out of that environment in my late teens and 20s, I was a wreck, scared of the outside world, other people's judgments. I was just a nervous, insecure wreck. How do I know I was a wreck? Simply, I didn't realize it until later when I was introduced to something called group therapy, which is where my journey to become a psychologist began. And that's where I learned a number of things, including this business about dealing with religious trauma. And that helped me. It helped me break through those barriers and deal with those hurts and losses. It helped me find my way, and ultimately it helped me achieve a career that I never ever thought would have been possible for me. That's the beauty of getting in touch with our deeper self. There's gifts waiting there for all of us, every one of us, and surprising things, things you would have never dreamt were possible for you. So, here in therapy land, as I like to call it, I was introduced to words and language and books about the scary world that I came from and into this potentially new world before me that actually began to make sense. Yeah. Because when you're coming out of religion and religious trauma, it's like breaking free, but you don't know what you're facing now because you had that big cloak wrapped around you, and that was your reality. And now that you're stepping out of it, there's this whole different world waiting for you. And for a lot of people, and people who stick to those religions, staying inside the cloak is what they choose because the world out there is scary. But if you got an urge to get in touch with your deeper self and get to know yourself at a core level, then coming out of there is a must for you. And that little kid inside, he will absolutely adore you and love you for it because they've got all kinds of interesting gifts to share with you. Yeah, this is your prize. Your prize is your own self, your heart, your deepest self. That's the prize. So, for me, being introduced to psychology, it became, well, some people have suggested to me that it was a new religion, but no, I called it my lifeboat. And it began to slowly carry me out of that morass of religion that I was born into. And honestly, life began to make sense. I began to realize, and this is important, folks, that I could love myself. And if you've been indoctrinated in one or more of these more severe religions, and you were taught that you were a sinner, and you were taught that you were wrong for the smallest things, then you know what I'm saying to you is difficult. Self-acceptance and self-love are difficult. Because according to those standards that they delivered to you and indoctrinated you with, you have to be perfect. Well, who's perfect? Certainly not them. Movies like Spotlight, who focused on Catholic indiscrimination and abuses, certainly showed there's a lot of imperfection there. But that's not the point. The point isn't so much to understand their history and their philosophy and what they did. The point is that trauma feels awful. It hurts. And it governs your attitude towards yourself and how you feel about yourself. And trauma can be healed, just like the trauma of losing a loved one. It can be healed. And that's what this book is about. That's what this purpose is about. And if you Google religious trauma, you're going to see all kinds of resources for it. I'm just one of them that's showing up now. So this is my introductory video to what this is going to be about. And I'm going to be referring to different chapters in the book and different parts of this experience of coming to terms with this trauma and healing our inner self. And yes, the goals are self-acceptance and self-love. They're primary, they're important. If you're a parent, and or not, but if you're a parent, you want to teach that to your children. You want your children to love themselves and feel good about themselves. Correcting their behavior is necessary, but that's behavior. Unconditional love says you're lovable. That's the meaning of it. And that comes from the heart. And religion doesn't allow that. Any of the religions I've studied, any of the most certainly the religion I lived through, and since I've been doing this work, I've met Scientologists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Pentecostals, people, New Agers even, but people from different walks of life and religions with all kinds of strict rules. And the only way you're acceptable to them is to follow those rules. But then by following those rules, you're disconnected from yourself. And what we learned about dysfunctional families in the 80s, specifically families where people were dominated by an alcoholic, is everybody was stiffened up. Everybody was hiding because there was this dominant person in the room, this person that when they were drinking were dangerous. Religion's like that. When religion's in the room, it wraps itself around you and it controls. That's what religions are about. Anyway, if you're ready to hear this kind of stuff, this is what I'm bringing to the table. My videos may be a bit crude at the beginning because I'm getting back into it, but my message is what it is. And if it resonates for you, then please say so in the comments. I'm Maurice Turmel, and thank you for tuning in today.